Welcome to the Wing Life Podcast, where we talk about wing foiling and the lifestyles of those who enjoy this great sport.
What are we going to chat about today, fellas?
Motorcycles and
rocket ships.
Sorry.
Yeah.
People already have tuned out. What is that?
Wing handling. What are we doing?
How to fly the wing. The cool thing about like the wing is it's something that is fairly safe. If you compare it to, like, let's say a kite, you could get a really cheap wing and bring it with you when you go to the beach and give it to your kids to play with. And it's not even something, people were doing, I think, with like windsurfing. It's kind of like being able to play with your wing on the beach is kind of like unique to winging, and partly why winging is so accessible, because it's just like, pretty safe and simple. You literally have your wing that holds into like a backpack, so pretty small. You get a pump it, and now you are ready to play with it. So in this manner, I feel like the wing is pretty convenient. Partly the appeal of like this new sport, wing foiling,
and appealing to if it's snowing out back, or if it's a lake and it's icy, or if it's water, you name it. Ice skates, skis, boards, SUPs, foils. There's a lot of apparatuses, skateboards, things you can do it with and learn and play with. So a lot of ways with the family, by yourself. I know Gwen's been playing with like a longer skateboard SUP thing. What you can give a shout out, but just like it on pavement.
Yeah. I mean, some like learning how to handle your wing on land is often going to be easier than in the water, just because once you add the water element, you don't have the same stability. You are, drifting, moving, you have the wind chop. So spending as much time as you can on land. Now, if you are going to be moving at decent speed, let's say you're on a skateboard or something, you are going to want to protect yourself, because you don't want to, the fall is going to hurt more than in the water. But yeah, the wing is super user friendly to use. And if anything happens, you have a leash attached to your wing. You let go of everything, and everything is going to be fine. Your wing is just going to fall right here, and it's going to stay there. So the wing, essentially, like when you are not, using it or powering it, it's like a flag, So super, like, it has a really good deep power range. It's from 0 to, like, if you want, you can get 100 out of it. So the first step is kind of like seeing how, when you hold the wing by the leading edge, by the handle, how it flies on its own, because I think that's a really good indication of like baseline of where your wing should be. Often, once we start grabbing it at the beginning, something goes wrong, it flips, and sometimes we want to have the wing in a certain position, and we feel like we are fighting it. And always try to go back to that neutral position, let the backhand go, fly your wing, and adjust from there your position until you find the right position. If you start grabbing it really hard, trying to force it in a position that it doesn't want to go, it's always going to feel like harder. So to me, everything starts from that neutral position.
Yeah, no, I'd second that with saying another good helpful tip is starting front to back. So you always start from the front where the handle is on the wing and work your way back to the back trailing edge of the wing. Because if I start with trailing edge first, everything flips and goes crazy. So just start with the front. The other thing you get with what Gwen was saying is if I just hold the front of the wing, you're going to understand where the wind's blowing, what direction, where it's oscillating. So wind is usually at a direction and it may oscillate left or right. And just holding your wing there, you're going to kind of get a general idea of what the wind is doing, how, depending on where you are, there's a lot of factors there, but 100% best way to start with it, just grabbing the handle, letting it weather vane out and kind of seeing the direction, and then work your way from front to back.
Mm-hmm. Good points, guys, because I think your first kind of step is just learning how to walk around with this thing with that leading edge handle, which is the first one, like handle 0, I guess, if we want to call it. And just practice walking to the beach, walking back, because you will eventually have a board attached to this combination. And then you got to figure out which hand do you carry your wing. I'm coming out of the water, I'm going to, which side is it going to be on? It might oscillate left and right, so you don't want it, because what my first wing tear ever was, I was coming to shore and then a weird gust came at a different angle and it popped my wing over top of my foil, because my foil was coming to shore. And so I think practicing that, just walking around with this thing and figuring out what it's going to do, what happens if you go left or right. Handle 0. What do you guys have techniques for just, because a lot of wings now are hard handled and they're just 2 handles. So it is a lot easier to learn, I guess, than before when you had Y handles and like potentially 5 or 6 different material based handles.
Well, so like the interesting part, is just like you said, making your way from the front to the back. So sometimes what can be challenging on some wings is if you have like a bigger gap between your front and your back handle, because now you are kind of like, it's nice when you can make your way from the front to the back slowly, like getting comfortable with like holding it closer to the leading edge, and then not having a huge gap between the front and the back handle. Because what I see sometimes is like when that's the case, people grab the back handle and it's such a big gap that all of a sudden they have a hard time handling it, because it's kind of like too much power or something. Because as soon as the more you go for the back of the wing, the more power you are going to have, because you expose more of the wing into the wind. So like really getting used to, sometimes I even have people like practicing holding the leading edge handle and the front handle and using it like that, because that prevents you from giving it too much power. And so now you can only give it a tiny bit of power and kind of like feel the wing. As soon as people go for that back handle, especially if that back handle is pretty far, then things start to go wrong, because they didn't really get that time to like get used to how much power you would go when you reach for the back. But another tip that I think is very helpful is to limit yourself to only using kind of like fingertip pressure on the wing, and that's going to help you feel where the wing should be, and not gripping it so hard and now forcing it where you think it should be, but it's if you are fighting it, that means it probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, those are awesome points. I would just lead into with that a visual that everybody should just kind of take a vision on is when you're first starting, whether you're holding that front leading edge, we'll call it front handle or front handle. The reaction that I see a lot is everybody's reaching away from them to really try to get the back one, because you're not feeling the wind, like Gwen is saying. And I would say something to really think about when you do this is just take your front hand or front, whatever handle you're grabbing onto, left hand, right hand, whatever it is, and pull the wing above your head and start playing with things above you more versus reaching for. I think you can see that changes a lot with your wing. If I bring things to me, so bring the wing here and I grab here, versus if I'm like reaching way out for everything, it becomes harder. You fall over the board. Those I see happening. I did it. I see it as a struggle in the very beginning. So, whatever hand is holding kind of that front one, the keeping your wing level hand, pull that up towards you to reach other things, and it will make that struggle a little less, I think, and it's something for you to play with.
Yeah, that's a good point, Damien. Yeah. And especially how I broke it down with some is I would just go vertical axis, horizontal axis. So your vertical axis, so up and down, was adding power. And then your horizontal axis was how you would make your wing turn left and right. And then I was only giving them 2 fingers on the front, 2 fingers on the back. And if anything happens, just let go of your backhand, But I was trying to, because I wanted it to make sense for myself. Like, how do you get this thing to turn left and right? And the vertical and horizontal seems to make sense. It made sense to me. But Gwen, how do you describe that? How to control your wing going left and right? Because like as soon as you get on the water, that's your key.
Yeah. So to me,
Yes.
it
Wild
kind
guess.
of like, it all starts from the neutral position when you fly your wing. When you just hold the leading edge handle and your wing is just flying on its own flat into the wind. The strut, that the middle part where your handles are, the strut is pointing straight into the wind. And that strut, let's call that angle 0 because it's straight line up with the wind. As soon as you start moving that angle of the strut, that wing is starting to tip one way or the other. So, like you said, that vertical line would be in and out, like more power, less power, and the forward and back or side to side would be your angle of your wing. It's going to start tipping one way or the other. So when you start, often people get like grab the wing and now all of a sudden that wing tip is touching the ground, wants to go down. It's just because you are changing that strut angle in relation to the wind too much, and now it's flipping. One way to like reset is, like you said, let go of the backhand, and now naturally that wing is going to position itself again with the strut pointed straight into the wind, angle 0. And then from there, if you just put fingertip pressure, you're going to be able to figure out if I put it slightly this way, it's going to start tipping the right way or the other way. But the other thing we need to kind of understand is the wing, unlike windsurfing, is not attached to anything. And so you can move both hands and technically your wing can be in the same position if you just move it around, but if you move both hands in the same time, that wing has not changed. So that's important to understand, because sometimes I see people that only play with one hand, but then they get, let's say they only drive with the backhand, but then they find themselves at the end of the range of motion, and that's not even enough. But they forget that front hand can change as well. So now you don't have to be in such an awkward position holding your wing if both of your hands are behind your head, because that's how the wing has a good position. If you move both hands, now your wing could be in a much more comfortable position. So again, that kind of comes with time. But to me, if you apply two things, one, really understand what is the neutral position, that if you just hold the front handle, the wing is going to fly itself pretty neutral. And then from there, only you use fingertip pressure to make slight changes from that, then you're gonna start really feeling it. If it starts going wrong, reset, handle neutral, start again, get into it very gentle. It's almost like the same process as just wing foiling in general. If you start rushing through the steps, you start not understanding, what it's doing, and you can't fix it, So you'll always have that initial position, neutral, and then slightly make small changes from there, and you're gonna start feeling how it wants to behave.
Yeah, I would just add on one other thing that I think is a visual representation when you first show up and you're beginning this. You see all the wingers with their wings sideways to them, and they're riding along. So you get this visual of my wing right out in front of me, and that's what I do. And so I'm going to put my wing there, and it's going to pull me, and that's how I'm going to learn the sport. And I would say what Gwen was breaking down was spot on, but it's hard to visualize. But picture, I would say, if you were to visualize it, the wing is just an airplane wing above your head. So if I can create that to lift me and fly, very stable and very steady, if I turn it right in front of me, it's likely going to crash. So if I can have that wing above me and use that, that's going to help me go upwind. It's going to help me lift me to stand up and get on my board. But if I start putting it in front of me or directly where the canopy's like a windsurf sail, likely I'm going to have more mistakes in the beginning there. But so a visual, I guess, something that you should just think when you're first starting is, especially when you're on your knees, especially when you're tacking and just learning how to hit the basics. Keep that wing really, really flat and high in the sky and do tiny little like bites into the wind and tiny little movements. And you'll be surprised with how much it reacts, but you'll learn a lot more because the wing's very stationary above you, very easy to control. But the second I start getting it more in front of me is when wingtips catch and more things happen. And I would say that's a very helpful thing in the beginning is, and a very big perception is, even for myself, when I started, I was 100% wing right in front of me, wingtips crashing. Like I was like, what is going on? I couldn't put it together. And if I would go back now, I would keep my wing much higher and I would say larger wings, even when you're first starting, because there's not a lot of power. There's really not a lot of power. Now, if you live in Hawaii, it's blowing like 50, it's a different story. But likely if it's blowing, let's just say 20 knots, it's not a lot of wind. I mean, it is, but it's not. The wing doesn't generate tons and tons of power. So it's the reason why we said at the very beginning of this conversation is it's great for the family. It's great for your wife. It's great for everybody. You can give it to anybody. They can play with it because it's not tons of power. You just let go of it. Not a big deal. But again, that's to a fault to where it doesn't have a ton of power, like a kite where you could dive and you could go across like 15 beaches. So, there's a difference there.
Very good point, guys, because like getting used to walking around with it in both directions on land, getting used to flying it on your knees is also super important. But then this is just the basics. This is just holding your wing in a certain position. This isn't looking into pumping or trying to generate max power to get you up on foil in like light wind. This is just learning how to walk around, turn around, try these different maneuvers, try these different tricks. I would say if you can just try to master turning around, playing with it, doing whatever it is that you can, because then as more and more does that become more ingrained into you, then when you're on the water for the first time, it's going to make, at least you can forget about the wing a little bit more. So good points, guys. What would be next on that? What I tended to do is just made people go through the basic transitions on land. Gwen, is that something that you would make people do as well?
I would say, flipping the wing, because that's going to happen. So like get used to like flipping your wing upside down on your feet, but most importantly from your knees, because that's the position you will be in the water. And then from there, usually I would say I make people like walk with it one way and then get used to letting go of that back hand, switching your front hand, turning around, go the other way. Getting used to moving with your wing is also like important, because you want to simulate that you are moving in one way, one direction, like you would on the water. It's going to give you just that extra feedback of like, are you holding it right or not? So if you have hard time walking with it, it's going to be even more complicated to move with it on the water. And so spending enough time so that you can go from all the sequence on the beach with your wing, from I'm on my knees, I'm picking up my wing, I'm putting one front foot forward, I'm on my feet, I start moving, and then making sure that feels very comfortable on the beach, so that your wing handling is at least at a decent level to take it to the water.
I would add to have your wife or kids use a pump to pump up your wing. It's a good thing to start with, so that you don't have to do it. Just use people around you to do all the hard stuff.
Yep. Good call. And
Kidding.
flying.
That's why your wife doesn't want to get into winging now. That's how you taught her.
I'm losing you guys. The internet's off.
I think flying the wing over your head as well and getting it used to being vertical above you is such a crucial skill, because as soon as you start to ride, and let's say you're standing up and you want to do some feet switches and you want to start doing certain things or transitions, the easiest thing to do is to have that wing in a less powered position above your head. So good point, guys. Like, get used to all of these different. So anything that you can dream up on the water, try to master it on land first, and don't worry about it. Everybody does it. So you don't need to be a cool kid and skip it, because I think it's just going to make your journey of not getting rescued a lot more fun. So, because it is just that much easier. And Gwen, how do you find the easiest way? Because the first thing when you get on the water, for example, is learning, because your board always tends to go downwind. So how do you find like using the wing as a paddle in essence to make yourself go across the wind or to turn your board? Is there a simulation or something that you found that's been the most useful on land to help people with that? Because that's almost your first crucial thing, to go 90 degrees to the wind.
So in my opinion, there is a really good indication, and it pretty much works every time. When you hold your wing and you are on the water, you are on your board, if you hold your wing and you can see both of your hands, so you are often, let's say, looking in between your hands, and in your field of vision, you see your hands, you're most likely going to go downwind. But if you can't see your backhand, so the position to try to like describe it would be that your front hand has 90-degree bend in your arm, your backhand is extended and reaching, which feels like behind you, and you are looking over your front shoulder. So your backhand is not at all in your field of vision. You cannot see it. You are looking over your front shoulder. That would be a position that's making you go upwind. And the reasoning behind that is that just like if you have a sail, if you are like a pole and you can rotate and you put a sail in front of you, when that wind hits, it's going to bring that nose downwind. If that sail is behind you and the wind hits it, it's bringing that nose. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's that principle of like, if most of your sail is in front of you, that wind is pushing your nose downwind. If most of your sail is behind you, it's turning that nose into the wind. So the goal, and that's when, it kind of like feels like we are kind of like doing a twist. We are twisting the core, and that backhand is reaching as far back as we can. So it's not at all in our field of vision. That's, but to put it simple, I would say, try to hold your wing with a 90-degree bend in your front arm. Backhand is extended and feels like it's reaching back. Now that's giving you some leverage to bring the nose upwind.
Yeah, I would say if I were to paint a picture the best I could, it would be helpful for somebody. Would be more like when you climb on whatever it is, your SUP or board or whatever, you try to angle your board into the wind and try to set your knees or how you kneel on it, where you're maybe, and this is, many people teach differently, but I would say instead of putting your knees straight into the wind, more sideways on the board to where I can face my wing and I can actually use my knees to angle and push maybe that board in that upwind direction, and it'll help you be able to manage a wing easier and learn how to kind of go upwind or ride sideways to the wind. A little easier than if I just get my knees vertically straight in line with that board. Then I really have to twist my body and really have to have my wing at a better ability, I would say, than if I just kind of sit. I guess it would be my knees are facing the sides of my board, if that makes sense.
Like your feet dangling off the side.
Exactly. Like, some like to as a reference, like almost everybody would naturally go in this position when you climb on your burn. Like you climb on your burn, your wing is in the water. Like almost naturally, your knees would be toward the wing because that's how you would hold your wing. And so if you don't, move your knees from there, then you will be in a good position to go upwind. But yeah, I agree with you, Damien. Like if your knees are straight in line with your burn, you're gonna have extra twist. And if your knees are away from your wing, so on the upwind rail, now you're gonna be like mega twisted to just go barely upwind. So that's your knee position, or like how you position yourself on the burn is gonna impact that as well. And another thing, if we were gonna talk about like going upwind, is just like a stand-up paddle. When you are on a stand-up paddle with a paddle and you are standing in the middle of the stand-up paddle, if you try to turn, you're going to take a really wide turn because you don't have much leverage. If you take a step toward the tail, now you give one stroke with your paddle and that nose is turning really quickly. Same on the wing burn. If you are in the middle of the burn, you're not going to have much leverage to go upwind. If you move few inches back, now you're going to have much more leverage over that nose. So to me, those are like the two things that you can use to go upwind, is using your wing to make sure that wind is giving you that leverage to bring the nose up, and then moving yourself on the burn, like Damien talked about, with your knees, more pointed toward your wing, more toward the downwind rail, and then forward and back. The more back you're going to go, without falling back, of course, but the more back you're going to go, the more leverage you're going to have to have control over that nose.
That was very well said. I'm ready to go.
So I guess your task for this week, if you're tuning into this episode, your task is to send us a video of you trying these basic things. Let us know what your wins, what your losses were. And all right, guys, are we ready to wrap this up? Any other quick little points about flying your wing?
No, I would just say put the time in. I think Gwen said it the best in the last episode, but that's, it's just putting the time in. I think it's actually was said here. I don't know if it was in this episode or the one before, but, we mentioned some of the pros out there people jumping off sand dunes and flying and soaring. And, those are kids that have put time in flying their wing a lot, learning how to do things that are unthinkable. And those kids are world champions right now. And they just put mega time into playing with that wing. So if I were to say one thing,
don't
just
jump
put the time
from the roof of your house with your wing on your first day.
Disclaimer.
Let's maybe start. Disclaimer, Gwen. Yes. But did you try that, Gwen? No, it's just something to think about. It's the truth. Put your time in. It'll make you better. Hopefully these little tips and tricks can help you.
All right, guys. Thanks for joining us. We'll chat to you soon in the next one.